3, 2, 1, liftoff.
Cannabinoid Connect, the nation's most diverse cannabis-related podcast.
The one and only Shayda Torabi Howell. What is going on, girl? It's great to see you.
Kevin, it's wonderful to see you. I'm so excited to be on your podcast. It's been a while, but I know we have so much to catch up on. So happy to be here.
We do. Yes, it is a pleasure to have you. First and foremost, got to get this out. Congratulations to you and your husband, Sage, on the upcoming baby and all the beautiful things with your family growing in the Austin area. So just want to throw that out there. Yes,
I appreciate it. We're very excited, and obviously to being in cannabis. I think there's a lot of noise around cannabis and pregnancy and motherhood, and so I'm excited to transition into that chapter of life and really explore it from some new perspectives. But yeah, we're excited and grateful for the opportunity to become parents.
Absolutely, it is truly a miracle. So with that, let's kick off the discussion. First I want to ask you, before we dive into the world of the Texas cannabis market and the advocacy that you're doing through the Texas Hemp Coalition. But first is when you're advocating for hemp policy in Washington, D.C., I think that's what spurred our initial kind of, interaction, and was like, I saw that video that you posted of your hearing. I asked you if I could use that for my TikTok channel. And so tell me all about it. You're on the front lines. Tell me about your testimonial and the future of hemp legislation in the United States.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like so much has happened and yet so much is yet to come, which is kind of par for the course being in this industry, right? And I think especially when you get involved in politics and the advocacy side of things, you get that front row look into how democracy and policy really is. And it is very glacially slow. So to kind of set the stage, right, we have the Farm Bill, which is up for amendment, which, for a refresher, for those of you who aren't aware, it was up for amendment at the end of 2023, and then it got pushed till 2024. And so there's been a lot of movement, but the kind of sentiment right now is that it may not actually get dealt with in 2024 because we have a presidential election this year, which would then push the Farm Bill into 2025. So obviously from a hemp perspective, cannabis as well, I think there's a lot of excitement and movement. You're certainly seeing a lot of kind of, crossing the lines, meaning I've seen big cannabis brands launch hemp lines. Obviously, hemp has the opportunity of being direct to consumer. There's a lot of scrutiny over our industry because we maybe don't have the same checks and balances, which I agree, but I also think there's a lot of checks and balances lacking on the regulated side of cannabis as well. Right. And so people want there to be more explicit clarity in Farm Bill legislation, which for all intents and purpose, it's less than 0.3% delta 9 THC in a dry weight basis. It's obviously not very specific on what, the cannabinoids, encompass and what those products are, age limits, things like that, which candidly is the same challenge we're having here locally in Texas as well. So you mentioned my Senate State Affairs Committee hearing. So to kind of simultaneously, if you're looking at a timeline, perhaps the Farm Bill gets amended and implemented at the end of 2024. Texas's legislative session kicks off January 2025. And so Texas basically has copied and pasted the 2018 Farm Bill language, which is less than 0.3% delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis. And so that's the market that we're also existing under. And it's clear that the state wants better checks and balances. Some would say the state wants to eliminate the hemp market. And I think that's where we come in. I'm the president of the Texas Hemp Coalition. That's who I do my advocacy with and under. Federally, we are partnered with U.S. Hemp Roundtable. So we're kind of like a chapter organization to some extent. So when we go to DC, we're going with U.S. Hemp Roundtable, really leaning on their expertise. And then, of course, in Texas, doing things with the coalition. But it's a similar conversation, right, where people want there to be more explicits in place from a legislative perspective. And that's kind of where the advocacy kicks in, that we are trying to go in, have conversations with these policymakers. I would say like the condensed version as well for you or just the people listening. It's one thing to see these media headlines, which I think happen in every capacity. I see it happening federally, banking is going to pass, or banking passed the House. It's like, okay, well, banking has to pass the Senate as well, right? It can't just
Right.
be on one side of the equation. And so same thing in Texas. It's like, oh, the Senate says this. It's like, okay, well, the House also has to say their piece too. And so you have to have both sides of, the way that legislation works to make something pass, be a law passed into legislation. And so from a federal perspective, we've been going up to DC because the Farm Bill is up for amendment. There was a really kooky amendment introduced by Mary Miller, and she is on the House side. So I would say federally, the House is very anti kind of the language that we want to see, and the Senate seems to be supportive. In Texas, the Senate is who we see having some of this anti-language, and the House has been supportive. So again, it's not that explicitly that's kind of how it falls, but that's kind of what some of the trends we're seeing happening. So this was going on federally in the House. We were going up there to speak to other House representatives. So really trying to have conversations with members of the House versus sometimes we go up and have members of the Senate as well. And yeah, there's an appropriations committee that some language got introduced into. So it's still in the works. I would say, just to wrap that piece up, our sentiment leaving DC, which the coalition will be going back up in September again with US Hemp Roundtable. The sentiment when we were leaving, I guess that would have been July. I feel like we were there, June, maybe end of June, beginning of July.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
It's good to go up, right? It's like having those conversations, being in front of them, being professional, trying to articulate, both sides, kind of how things are framed. The Mary Miller amendment, kind of, the condensed version of that is Mary Miller had been told some information from some MSOs. She represents Chicago. It's no surprise. She represents Illinois. Chicago, that state has a history of large multi-state operators. Obviously, I think there's a big threat from some of these different aspects of the industry as it comes to hemp legislation. And so those are some of the conversations we're going and trying to have, saying, hey, we want there to be, checks and balances, but eliminating a marketplace, just having blanket statement language is not going to actually help the industry. It's going to hurt a lot of the small business operators and really prop up what I would say is corporate cannabis. So that's, kind of part of the process when we go to DC. We're having these conversations, just trying to speak to the topics. And then it's a little bit, you're waiting to see when the next time they meet, do people vote and say that they're going to do the things they do? And so that's kind of where things are standing right now. Like I said, we'll be up in September again, and then we'll see if they actually do the Farm Bill in 2024, if it pushes till 2025. So advocacy is something that I'm grateful to get to be a part of, having those conversations, representing both Texas and, just the business owners, small business owners in the conversation. But it's not as you go tell them your piece and then they're like, oh, you're so right. Like, this makes sense. Like, you're
duh,
crazy.
why didn't I think of this? Like,
yeah. So you got to kind of appeal to what they're believing, what education they have, what misinformation they might have received, and realize that it's, you're piecing it together step by step. So we got a lot of work ahead of us, especially going back into Texas, prepping for our session. But we're very hopeful, I think, historically, to frame it for people as well. Hemp's been legal federally since 2018. It's been legal in Texas since 2019. And we've had now 3 sessions for hemp in Texas. And aside from passing it in that 2019 session, the program hasn't advanced. Now, we haven't lost necessarily. I mean, sure, we've got the smokable hemp ban that went into place, which means you can't manufacture or process smokables in Texas, but
they can sell from out of state, which is wild, right?
Yeah, just cuckoo stuff sometimes, dealing with like what the policymakers are doing, but we didn't, we haven't gone backwards. So I think as we go into this session, we're trying to actually pass legislation that improves the program. That's our hope. And so that's what we'll be working to do, setting, I think the state, you're looking at the Senate State Affairs Committee hearing that you mentioned my testimonial from Dan Patrick, our Lieutenant Governor. He is very clear to be kind of in opposition of this program, but the way that he opposes it is a little confusing, because in his communication, he's like, I want to deal with Delta 8 and Delta 9, but I also like don't want it to go to the hands of the children. And so you're like, do you want to eliminate it or do you want better regulation? Because we agree on better regulation, but I don't want it to be eliminated. And so those are, some of the conversations, again, trying to work with the state. My biggest, point that I made in that testimonial is like, if you eliminate this program, it's going to push it into the illicit market, and the illicit market has no checks and balances. And that to me is even more of a heartbreak, where you're going to start seeing these products because consumers want them. Kevin, you and I both know consumers want these products.
It's not stopping. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And so how do you get it to them safely? So how do you work with the state? How do you work with the federal government? Say, hey, this industry is here to stay. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, not just for the state of Texas, but for the United States. How do you support the operators, make it accessible and make it safe for consumers? So that's kind of, I would say like the roundabout platform, tied in a bow way that I'm approaching advocacy, the way that I'm approaching these conversations is we want to work with these government bodies. But we really don't want to see these programs be eliminated. So,
right. It's just, let's enact some common sense policies. Right. And what I wonder about is, because I started this podcast 4 years ago, and we've had these conversations, right, where people are advocating, we're trying to push for regulation because, to your point, there could be harmful products out there that could hurt people. Right. So are you seeing the conversation progress? I mean, what I mean by that is, are these lawmakers, maybe not the leader, like at the top, tippy top, but these people at the middle level, are they understanding? Are they grasping what you guys are pushing and talking about? Or is there openness to this? Is it well received?
I think there's becoming more understanding. I think there's definitely still a stigma, depending on, again, what kind of side you're ending up talking to. I think when you listen back to the Senate State Affairs Committee hearing here in Texas, a lot of the sentiments shared by the senators, especially Charles Perry, who's been a really big driver in this synthetic language here in Texas, like he just keeps saying the same things instead of listening to what we're asking for, which is we want to work with the state. We want to get rid of bad operators. We want to make this safe. We want to make this age gated. This is an adult product. This should be, accessible to adults only. Adults should be able to make decisions just like they make decisions about alcohol and tobacco and other adult products. Right. So it's like in that capacity, it's really sad sometimes because I don't know if we're actually making progress because, again, reflecting on some of the, previous sessions we've had in Texas, we haven't been able to push through on the Senate side, right? We're having the same conversations.
Right.
Now, alternatively, on the House side, oh my gosh, you're going and people are, they're understanding, they're open-minded, they're exploring, they're listening to some of the stories and testimonials that we're sharing, right? I think when you can put it in a perspective of real people and kind of erode what that stigma of cannabis is. Again, I think Senator Perry likes to hang on the fact that this is, you tricked me into legalizing smokables and it's just all this dope smoking. It's like, listen, candidly, I'm not here
it's
to police if you want to get high.
It's a versatile plant.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, yes, there's those people for sure. But again, as an adult use product, listen, Kevin, I don't drink alcohol. I haven't drinking alcohol in like 5 or 6 years.
And Shayda, I was going to tell you that when you were talking about that, you were not getting this, this is not going backward, because I can tell you there's so many friends that we have now that are like, I don't drink anymore. I just take edibles at night and I feel great. And these are people that would never want to smoke or consume. So there is a huge trend coming, and it's in the positive direction. I mean, alcohol is poison. And listen, I am proud of myself because I've really cut back, and I'm going to continue to do that. I don't say that I'm cold turkey, but it really is not good for you. You feel like shit. You really do after one or two drinks,
It's hard because it's normalized, right? And the state's perspective is that it's, kind of a legal industry. And so I think that's where we have, the hardest uphill battle is just, again, reframing the perspective of what cannabis is, what a consumer is, how do you consume these products? I think beverages is really helping change that trajectory because, again, you're seeing, not even just on the consumer level, right? The trends are there. I see every couple of weeks a new report, a new data set, something about alcohol trends are down and cannabis trends are up. I think it's the consumers, they're like we're explaining, their habits are shifting. But I think it's also impacting impacting, of course, then the businesses in the alcohol sector. They're paying attention. And so Minnesota, great example, when their state, quote unquote, accidentally legalized low dose beverages or low dose products. Who were the drivers of that, right? It was their alcohol manufacturers. It was their brewers. It was their cideries. It was these people who were realizing, hey, my consumer is changing. They're looking for other products. How can I take advantage of this manufacturing capability that I have and put something together that is going to be for the next generation, for the future of those people who they quite frankly, they want to hold something in their hand. They just didn't like, the alcohol component in it. And so I'm really excited about that trend as well, because I see it as a huge opportunity in Texas to help just kind of further push that along. Again, I think, it's not something that the state's necessarily talking about. And I'm honestly okay with it. If the state doesn't want to talk about it and they want to just hang their hat on a Delta 8, Delta 9. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, you guys go that direction. But I think, again, you're going to start seeing more. I mean, it's not a secret. This is public knowledge, big operators, Specs, Twin Liquors, or not Twin Liquors, sorry, Total Wine. I think Twin Liquors is, they're dancing around like, should we, shouldn't we? But all these distributors, they're starting to open up shelf space, distribution. And I think that is going to help kind of create that landslide of, hey, this is a new normal. Let's figure out, how do we keep this safe? How do we regulate it better? What does that look like? And so just to kind of, wrap up the question about, do we see change happening? Absolutely. Again, I think there are policymakers, legislators, regulators. I mean, we talk to them all the time, and they get excited because they are listening, they're paying attention, they start to know people in their, their community that are using these products from a health perspective, a wellness perspective, a recovery perspective. And I think that's only going to continue to swell. Again, then as you get to trying to have the conversation on the more opposing side, it's like, what's the language they like to speak? And maybe it's, certain regulations being put in place. It's certain, just things that you can agree to better manage those programs. And so I think, we're hopeful again that we'll make some progress this session. But I think that there's still a lot of work that has to be done between now and January for sure.
Yeah. And the work you're about, I mean, you touched on the stigma aspect of it all, right? Like what it all boils down to. And, I'm frequently on X or, or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And like, I see these lobbyists that are anti-cannabis, and like, I just don't understand how, because like the efficacy and the benefits are there, right? And like we just talked about, the habit trends of like people moving away from alcohol toward cannabis, these are all positive things, right? And it's blatant. Like we're young people, we see it. And so my thing is like they're harping on this whole like kids aspect of it, which the industry has never once advocated for anyone consuming that's underage, right? So like they just lean on this so hard. And then they talk about, the one I don't get is the violence aspect, how they say that you can get into a violent, I don't know, violent habits or violent behavior after consuming. That's new to me. In all the years of people knowing about what cannabis does and how it makes you feel, that's a first, right? Where it's like, you act violent, really? It's the opposite.
As a marketer, it is remarkable how much the propaganda of like things like reefer madness really have just taken a hold of people and embedded themselves so deeply and scared them. And it's not to say that there aren't bad operators out there, right? I think there's a lot of concerning things. So it's like, again, when I hear these policymakers and they have these concerns, I empathize because I'm in the industry. I see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't want to ever pretend like, oh, we're all perfect operators. Sure. And everybody's altruistic and everybody is like, super wholesome minded. But I think there's more of us that want to be good actors and set the stage. And so it's like when you're working to plead with the state or with the federal government to be like, no, we hear you. Like, I don't want those people operating either. Like, how do we work to figure this out?
Right.
Like, that's where it's lost on me. It's not like we're up there being like, oh my gosh, selling to children. Oh no. It's like, no, I age gate. I don't sell to 21 and or 20 and under. I only sell to 21 and over because that's the legal smoking age in Texas. That's the drinking age in Texas. And so I want to follow that, even though that's not a part of our legislation or regulation. I want to show good action by saying this to me is an adult use product. I'm going to treat it like an adult use product and only sell to adults. So
Right.
it's just, I think, continuing to have those conversations, having those talking points, again, being professional. I mean, it's not a faint conversation to be having, but again, I try to emphasize with where these people are coming from and try to, give them a little bit of grace for what they're believing and kind of what they've become gullible to over the course of their life. So
Sure.
it's changing.
Yeah. No, it's changing. And if I were to pull out a crystal ball, I really do think that as we near closer toward this election, that cannabis is definitely going to be brought up. Hemp, and I mean, it's going to really spark, it's going to force these candidates to really speak on the issue and deliver. I mean, I think that because they're they're pandering for votes, right? I mean, each side wants to win so bad.
Pushing it off. It's like, this has now become such a normal, common thing that to me, to have the censorship aspect on social media is still a little really,
it's weird.
2024, we're censoring cannabis creators. It's just crazy to see how normal it has become in most regards, but then you still find yourself in places, of course, being in Texas, going to certain towns or having certain conversations. I'm like, oh yes, the stigma still exists. Okay. But then, being in Austin, it's like, I can go downtown. I can literally, I mean, this was the craziest thing. I flew into Denver. I was in Colorado. As we all know, Colorado being a very big adult use market, they have some of the most egregious anti-hemp laws. So I get it. They want to protect their adult use market operators and they want to, keep hemp out. And so beverages, obviously it's a hot topic. We've launched beverages in the market. I'm in Colorado. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to go get a beverage. I'm in Colorado. Where do I get a beverage? And aside from the dispensary, which would be great if their dispensaries actually carried beverages, but it's a really challenging game from an adult use perspective because you have to think about the distribution, getting those products there, the refrigeration. It's not as accessible as the way that hemp brands and retailers and dispensaries have kind of caught on to it. And Colorado, I think the way that I kind of have understood it, they have allowed hemp beverages outside of the dispensary to contain THC, but it's capped at 1 milligram of THC. So I was calling one of the bars in Estes Park where we were doing this conference. I was actually there for NOCA, Northern Colorado Hemp Expo. And one of the big topics was hemp beverages, which is kind of ironic. Again, that all these beverage people in Colorado talking about products that you literally can't get in the state. And so I'm like, no, really, where can I get a beverage? I'm in Colorado and you couldn't get a beverage.
Wow. That's shocking.
To then be from Austin and literally, I mean, our beverages were so blessed. We're in hotels, we're in, James Beard award-winning restaurants, we're in cool bars, we're in grocery stores. To me, you should be able to get low dose. And I guess the general consensus for our, hemp beverages, at least, or from edible perspective, low dose is 10 milligrams and less. That should be, and I think you will continue to see that trend of low dose being accessible direct to consumer outside of the dispensary. In these general places. But isn't that what we always wanted? You should be able to go to a sport. We just launched at a golf resort. I don't play golf, so I'm really
nice.
But, you should be able to go see a sports team and drink a cannabis beverage. Again,
absolutely.
I'm not drinking alcohol. I'm going to these places and I don't want the alcohol on the menu. And then I think the joke with non-alcoholic is you're charging me $16 for an orange juice and Sprite and it has no function to it. So there's an audience that's craving something that is non-alcoholic, but is functional, that has benefits, that has some feeling. And I think these low-dose beverages are a perfect entree into normalizing cannabis, getting it in front of consumers outside of the dispensary. My favorite thing right now is cannabis as a packaged good. What are the CPG trends? And so seeing cannabis outside of the dispensary, that's how this industry continues to grow. And again, I think Texas, whether people really kind of want to acknowledge it or not, is really helping lead in that category because of the way that our hemp industry has really unfolded, the size of our state, the fact that we have so many, big city markets, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin. You've got this swell of interest from consumers. And as much as I want to think they're going to come in the dispensary, you and I both know that most people, maybe they're uncomfortable about it, but hey, you have it on a menu at their local, bar or their local restaurant, and they're with their friends, and their friends like, oh, I had one of these. They're fine. They're great. You're going to love it. It's like they're more likely then to buy into that product, have a
Right.
good experience, and then become a fan of this industry, become a fan of these products. And so that is definitely a category that we're excited to kind of lean into. But again, big spectrum, big picture, you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. You have states again like Colorado that are kind of stunting themselves, and then in return their operators are hurting because they're stuck in this state, adult use market, which I just think is being flipped on its head. I remember when I was doing my podcast, the sentiment was like, oh, poor Shayda. And I'm sure you get it too, being in Texas, like, you're not really in cannabis, like hemp isn't cannabis. And then
Right.
it was, oh, you saw those Delta products, like that's gross. And now it's like, oh, you're hemp. Oh, that's
Like
like the
hemp's
future
cool
of
now.
cannabis. Yeah. And
Yeah.
not that there isn't, again, people who are kind of like anti it or they're bitter or whatever the case may be. But to me, yes, I have skin in the game, but I'm also like, just where is this going? Like, remove your ego and just like be open
Exactly.
to where is this going and how
Yep.
consumers are getting access to these products. And like, then let's have a conversation from there, because I think we can all agree we want it to be made quality, we want it to be made safe, we want it to be only served to adults. It's like when you kind of put those on the table, then how do you unpack and actually create legislation and regulation that supports those, so it can be an open market. You don't want to kind of clamp and keep people stuck. I mean, again, I feel bad, and so people ask me all the time, when's Texas going to legalize? I'm like, baby, Texas is already legal. Like, what are you talking
Exactly.
about? You can get the
Yeah.
products you want. And so it's our job as advocates, as representatives of the industry, to continue to protect and defend and create great products, and represent the industry well, and educate these policymakers on how do you have a safe program moving forward. So how, I think there are still a lot of question marks, which is going to take talking to the state during the next couple months leading into session, of course going into session, having those conversations. But it is a little bit of like, these products are here, and so how do we kind of take advantage of it? I think one of the things I was mentioning to you too, we're super excited. We have been partnering with DoorDash. And so DoorDash being a huge delivery platform, they had approached us as a brand. They were like, hey, we've been testing this in other markets. We've been testing it in Minnesota. We're testing it in Tennessee. We're testing it in all these kind of hemp places where hemp products are legal, and have like a good market for it. And we want to work with you. So what does that look like? And so we've been kind of, beta
It's
testing
amazing.
it, and recently came online the last month. And it's exciting. It's exciting again to see our products alongside, hey, you want to get, this local ice cream delivered to you, or yeah, hey, you want to still get your alcohol delivered to you. And it's cool because their platform again is showing good faith for the industry, where they're going to age check you. They're going to check your ID when they, pick when your order is delivered to you. So it's not like they're just free willy-nilly selling these products. They're doing a really great job onboarding operators like ourselves, making sure we have all of our COAs with our products. We're having good, quality, high product photos, so that they, are very explicit with what we're selling. We're not miseducating people. And so it's been a really exciting channel to lean into as well, just because, again, like, I think if you would have asked me 4 years ago, like, where would hemp be going in Texas, I probably would have never in my wildest dreams been like, I'm selling cannabis beverages and edibles on DoorDash, and you can have them delivered to the convenience of your
It's
home or
incredible.
hotel, wherever you are in
Yeah.
Austin. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
No, it's I love the way you put it that way, because yeah, I mean 4 years ago you could never have predicted that, especially with looking back and seeing all the regulation and red tape and barriers that are put in front of the operators from the lawmakers. It's incredible. So first, congratulations on your new beverage, your product launch on that. And what are the names? So that, and where can they find them? Is it RITA and On High?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So we have RITA, which is our low dose cannabis seltzer. So we just launched our second flavor. If you're using the video, I've got my little cans. I'm like, they're on this side right behind me. So we've
I
got
see.
our
Yeah.
agave lime, which is our first flavor we launched in February.
You
And
can
then we
grab them if
just
you want so
launched,
we can see them. Yeah,
let me see. Yeah.
why not? Let's show the audience. The
Show the
the can
audience.
is beautiful. The design, I love it. It's
Thank
nice.
you. Yeah, I did the design on these. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like trying to figure out. So agave lime was our first. We launched in February, and then sweet sandia we just launched end of July, beginning of August, right in time for watermelon month. So this is our
Love
lime
it.
and our watermelon flavor. And then we are working on a third flavor for fall already. And so this is a 5 milligram Delta 9 THC, 5 milligram CBD, which is pretty, again, akin to what you're seeing in the canned cannabis seltzer space. We use agave as the sweetener. So we're really, trying to create a product that, again, you can feel good about consuming. You can enjoy a couple of them. Obviously, too, with education, I think that there is still a threshold of consumers who are new to this market. And when you're selling these products outside of the dispensary, just making sure that they understand what's in the product as explicitly as possible. But for us, we wanted to add that CBD back in as well, because CBD can help cushion the effects of THC. And so it's just a nice, smooth, well-rounded cannabis seltzer. So I'm about to send you some to enjoy.
I'd love to
So
try it. Yeah, I would love that. I mean, I love a good hemp beverage. So if you're willing, I'll
oh
send
my
you
gosh.
my address when we stop
Yeah,
recording here.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Happy to send it to you. No, so obviously it being hemp, these are federally legal. So we track what states maybe don't have the best hemp laws, like Colorado. Sorry, Colorado, can't send my beverages to you. But other states that are, so obviously you're in Texas, I can ship these straight to you. We sell them on our website, restartcbd.com, but she's got her own URL, restartrita.com. And then, of course, like I mentioned, we're strategically like in different accounts in Austin right now. We're not trying to do a ton of mass distribution, but just kind of, explore certain accounts where it makes sense for us, have some
Sure.
fun. We love marketing and events and things like that. And then you mentioned On High, which I do not have a bottle of, but we are about to officially launch it. We're kind of like soft launching it, but it's our attempt at a spiritless spirit, a cannabis, liquorless. That's a hard word. No alcohol, right? So no alcohol in any of these products.
Right.
But something that you could, sell to a bar. The bar could per pour ounce is going to be a serving, and our On High is a little bit higher strength at that 10 milligram dose. And so obviously if you're out at the club, out at a bar, out at a restaurant, being able to make mocktail type beverages, a little bit more fancy, kind of in the cocktail sector. And then as well for people who are wanting to make drinks at home. So we're just kind of seeing where there are trends and overlap opportunities to introduce those products into the marketplace and launching them. And then I think it's also fair to mention, people are always like, oh, you just launched beverages. I'm like, we actually have a lot of beverage products that we've launched, but most of them are going to be in the higher strength. So I have a 20 milligram product called Flight. I have a 50 milligram product called Sunnies. And I also just launched a 100 milligram product called Batch. And so those
Wow.
are sold in our dispensary, in our retail store, as well as online, direct to consumer. But those are, again, going to be more for just not for the general consumer to have access, right? I would hate for someone to be in a bar and then someone's serving them a 50 milligram drink. And like, as much as my dad can stomach 50 milligrams, the general consumer, that might be a little too much for them to enjoy on like a Thursday night. So
Right.
trying
Right.
to, again, follow some of those trends of what is safe serving. I think follow that up with education. So all of our partners were really involved with helping them understand what these products are, how these products are made, what a dose of THC is compared to a dose of CBD. That's always a fun conversation, as I'm sure you're familiar with. I was just talking to a group of marketers, and one of the team members asked me a question. She's like, okay, let's talk about dosing 10 milligrams of CBD versus 10 milligrams of THC. I was like, they're not the same. I was like, I argue you could have up to 100 milligrams of CBD and be fine, maybe sleepy,
Right.
but like 100 milligrams of THC, that's a lot. So
It's a
you don't
lot.
want to
Yeah.
look at them, interchangeably. And so that leans into, how do you train these teams, these staff members who are serving these products? And so I think that's just a whole new industry that a lot of people are leaning into and supporting. I know there's a lot of good like cannabis beverage alliance or Cannabis Beverage Association, Hemp Beverage Alliance. There's some good kind of, advocacy business groups that are helping kind of bring together the operators in the beverage space and really try to like drive forward good practices. But it is a little bit the wild, wild west. It's new. And so it's just like, again, being that operator, you want to lead by example. And so we try to step into those conversations, both for our partners and for consumers. But yeah, beverages, we're very excited about it because I think as much as people love smokable products, of course, Texas has a hard history with smokables just because of the smokable ban, making it a little bit more challenging for in-state products to really thrive. So you're going to see more coming in from out of state. also when you're smoking something, you're not really seeing someone's brand, right? When you're eating an
Right.
edible, you're consuming it, you're not really like holding that packaging. But, you know, the opportunity to be able to be at a concert, to be at a party, to be at, you know, your friend's house on a Friday night at a pool party and like holding that can, I just think is a really big opportunity for our industry. And I think that's why you're seeing so many people really lean into the beverage category, because people are looking to swap their traditional beverages with these cannabis hemp derived products. So I think there's a lot
Totally.
more to come, especially in a state like Texas. So
Totally.
you'll be one of the next to try our products. So excited for that
Well,
for you.
I am pumped. I appreciate that. No, it's so exciting, and congratulations again on the launch. And I look forward to just seeing them all throughout Texas. And
Thank you. Us too.
yeah. Well, as we wrap up, Shayda, I do want to, give you the floor. Again, you mentioned earlier in our discussion that the Texas legislation session is coming up in 2025. You mentioned a lot of your work and through advocacy through the Texas Hemp Coalition as president. So, highlight maybe some key issues that'll be addressed, and what the Texas Hemp Coalition's game plan is going into that session.
Yes, of course. So I think one of the things I wanted to bring up is that we are having, for all the people who are either in Texas as operators or people who are interested in getting their products into the Texas market, the Texas Hemp Coalition is doing our 3rd annual Texas Hemp Summit this November 1st and 2nd, 2024 at Texas A&M, which is super awesome. A&M just has a really great reputation as a university system, and for them to really lean in and want to support the conversation for the growth and development of hemp in Texas is just so remarkable for us. We're grateful to have their partnership and to have access to use their campus for our event. So we will be on the Texas A&M campus in College Station. We're doing kind of like a little evening event on the 1st, a networking event, and then a full day of scheduling. You can find out more at texashempcoalition.org/summit. We just released tickets. Early bird tickets are on sale right now, but it's really just a great opportunity. I think like you were, kind of helping allude to, if you want to get involved, you want to learn more, you want to get a pulse for what's going to happen in session. I mean, we're going to have legal conversations, kind of wrapping up what's been going on, what's to come in Texas. We're going to talk about where the Farm Bill kind of sits at that point, where things are going to kind of be, leaning into for Texas's session kicking off. And again, just good networking with other operators. I think the last time, we had pulled a retail list 2 times. There was about 3,000, 4,000 people on the retail list when we pulled it for the Senate State Affairs Committee hearing, because we were trying to pull some numbers for some of the testimonials. And then I think we pulled it maybe a couple of weeks ago, and it was like jumped to 7,000 licenses. So that's just on the retail side. On the selling side, of course, there's some, notable brands that are non-cannabis explicit. So some of your maybe local grocery stores or restaurants or bars. Again, I think you're seeing these brands come online. They want to be good operators. They want to be able to sell these products. Specs, I mentioned, is a really big, retailer in this category, really promoting these products. And so we want to have those conversations. We want to welcome those people just to really come and learn and network. And so we're going to have that event November 1st and 2nd again at A&M, and welcome anybody who wants to get involved and learn and support. And then, of course, just the coalition in general, as we gear up for the session, we're obviously open to membership and just people who want to support our mission, want to join our mission, who want to use their voices. I always welcome people who want to, kind of roll their sleeves up and get into the Capitol as well. It's really rewarding work. It's hard work, but it's obviously rewarding to be able to help change some of the sentiments and the conversations that are happening around this plant in our state. And so, yeah, we're just grateful to be heading into our 4th session and our 3rd year at the conference, and appreciate you for taking the time to have me on the podcast just to chat about what's kind of going on in Texas from my perspective. And yeah, a little bit more fun to come always, right? It's never a dull day in cannabis.
Absolutely. And Shayda, you are a true pioneer in this space. So it's really a privilege to have you on, and thank you for sharing all your insights. And again, good luck with Restart's new product launches, including the new beverages from Restart. Yes. And make sure that you just send me those links to the summit and your beverages as well, and I'll add that to this description. But thank you so much. Until next time, let's have you back on soon, okay?
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Cannabinoid Connect, the nation's most diverse cannabis-related podcast.